And we're recording.
All right.
All right. So, sorry. So this week we are working with verbs, and our sample is from a freshman student. Sorry, who's doing English in an English class, and she's a little more on the shy end, but does well in group work with her friends. And yeah, Spanish is her first language. Sorry. And anything, Jane has her in French class too. So as we have questions, she can provide more context too.
The only thing I would provide with this is I actually was a little bit surprised because they don't do a lot of extensive English explanation in my class. We do, we're in a beginning level language class, and I keep most of it in the language. So when I went to our English teacher for writing sample, and I saw this writing sample, I was actually quite surprised that it wasn't stronger than it was. I didn't realize that her writing skills in English were as weak as. So it made me kind of realize that I think her Spanish transfers to her French, and maybe makes her a French student than she is in her English class. So that was eye-opening for me.
That's what I was just going to ask, was how well she does in your French class.
She's not a super strong student, and I think spelling, I wonder if there might be some other issues with maybe even dyslexia or spelling, because I see some things here and then I see some things in French class that also indicate there might be something else going on rather than just language difference.
If there's like an IEP or something.
Yeah, she's not on an IEP, but I just see some of the things that that she does. Now that they're writing more in my class, they the first several weeks of French are almost all just speaking and listening activities. They don't do writing. So she's a first-year student, and we're in week 15 of the semester out of 18 weeks. So I've just started in the past, say, 3 or 4 weeks to see some writing, and so I see some parallels between her English and her French, But I guess I was a little surprised that her English writing was as weak as it was.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good to know.
She's a super nice girl, and she does aim to please, but I definitely, like you mentioned, Rachel, she is way more comfortable in her small group setting with her friends. And I would even describe her almost as animated in some of those discussions when we do small group work.
Oh, nice.
In the whole group, she's very quiet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
in that collective, like how we talked about individualistic and collective, in that collective world, she thrives, huh? Like with her friends.
Yes, if she gets to choose who her community is. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right.
So should we move on there?
Let's do
talk about the. Yeah.
Key uses.
So for if we're doing the can-do sample.
You know what? Actually, I forgot. I should probably just talk a little bit about the grammar part.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
As the grammarian. So our focus for this sample is going to be on verbs and verb tenses and verb forms, which in reading the 60 pages of verb information in the False book is like, oh my, I have some work to do myself on being able to identify these verb tenses. And interestingly enough, I found myself translating them into French because I know what verb tenses are in French because I've learned it as a second language. I don't know what they're called in English, but my French served me very well in reading this grammar stuff.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd be translating it like, present perfect or whatever. I'd be translating it to what that meant in French, and then I wrap my head around it because they're actually quite parallel. Our verb tenses are pretty parallel.
That's really nice. Yeah.
So, anyway, so as far as the grammar goes, I think we'll just address it as we look at the sample and the errors.
Yep, sounds good. Okay, so if we're looking at her arguing in her writing, I'm getting from the prompt that she's supposed to be arguing about sites or if they should have cell phones in classes or not.
Exactly.
I didn't get
right.
Her
And I don't
opinion
know
is
who
that.
he is, if that's a teacher or
Yeah.
if that's a principal. Tell us, Jane, is there any context about the cell phone policy in the school, how it is now?
The cell phone policy is basically teacher by teacher. We each have a
Gotcha.
cell phone policy. So I'm sure in this sample, and I guess I regret that I didn't ask my colleague to give me the prompt for this question. That's okay. I should have done that. I think it would give us more context. But the he, I'm sure, is referring to her teacher.
Okay.
I don't know
perfect.
what class it's in, but so I'm sure that the he is referring to her teacher because her teacher would be setting the cell phone policy for their class.
Well, she immediately has a tense issue here. If he relaxed the cell phone policy, it would be a little easier since they wouldn't have phones. So it needs to be relaxed.
Right.
The policy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I guess I'm still a little bit confused because she's talking about something that could happen in the future, right?
Well, this is an interesting thing because this is the would be is the conditional, which is the conditional tense, and the conditional sentence is usually set up in a compound sentence with a setup in the past tense in an if clause. So that's what we have here. We have if he relaxed the cell phone policy. So in an if clause, the if clause part of a conditional sentence is normally in the past tense.
Okay.
And so that's what we would want. I mean, when we get to the point where we're talking about this, I think it would be setting up conditional sentences, practicing conditional sentences by if plus a past tense, then a conditional tense.
Yeah, so it sounds like, and I know we're jumping like ahead into the instructional steps, but it seems like.
But that's okay. I feel like when it fits, we might as well while we're thinking about it,
We need to be giving her slots in order to help her connect those together. Because her argument also doesn't make sense logically at all.
No. Well, actually what I would, if I were correcting this paper, I would meet with her and have her write her sentences out and basically number her sentences rather than write them in paragraph style so that she actually has to identify where one begins and one ends. The next one begins and ends. The next one begins and ends.
Yeah.
Write me 3 or 4
and then almost
sharp sentences with a beginning and an end, then we can link them together into a paragraph. But I lose her so much because of the lack of punctuation.
Yeah.
I just lose her argument.
Yeah.
And that vocabulary development too, like, using tricky a couple times, like just, I think, exposure to language and being able to read more and like develop that vocabulary is huge too. We actually did the conditional this week with my students, and it's so fun because how often do teachers and parents and sports coaches use conditional? So it was just like so great to talk about or what's the conditional you would give your younger sibling? Oh, if you don't take a bath, then you can't watch Paw Patrol. So kids were having a lot of fun with it. So I think conditionals can be fun too, like in instruction, which is cool.
Absolutely.
Talking about those things.
Yeah. Right. So if we're looking exactly at this arguing thing, I think she's pretty low because we have the level 1 entering. That means that she's selecting words and phrases to represent points of view, and she's listing pros and cons. She is listing those. They don't make sense.
Right.
But she's trying to. I don't even think she's at a level 2 yet where she's trying to express claims with evidence and listing counter-related ideas. I don't think she's there yet.
See,
I think she was trying, talking about like the websites or different things, but it was so confusing that the evidence wasn't clear enough,
Sorry, Rachel,
right?
I didn't hear what you said. It was so what?
Oh, sorry. I think she was trying to provide evidence when she was talking about like the websites and textbooks. People wouldn't be interested, but I think the other language area, like errors, got in the way so much that it isn't clear, with the arguing part.
for example, in the first sentence where she says, even if we correct the verb and say, if he relaxed the cell phone policy, it would be a little easier since they wouldn't have phones. Easier for whom?
Right.
Do you know
And
what I mean?
also,
Yep.
if you relax the cell phone policy, that means that you do have phones. So I'm confused.
Right.
Right? That's true. That's true.
If you relax the cell phone policy, it would be easier. Yeah, for the student, for the teacher, what would be easier? You know what I'm saying? That's why I think I would want her to break these sentences apart and then clarify each sentence and then glue it back together. String it back together in a paragraph form.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, I agree with you, Megan, in that, let's see, expressing claims with evidence. She has, it would be more tricky, but if they textbooks, it would bore the students and make it less fun. So she's basically saying that if they just have textbooks without access to their cell phones for websites and stuff, the learning would be less fun. So that's evidence. I mean, that's evidence of supporting her claim, but she doesn't, also in her argument, she doesn't make an upfront statement about what her argument is. She basically doesn't put a thesis statement in this.
Yeah, that is really missing there.
Right.
And she definitely isn't able to list content related ideas on different points of view. So she hasn't included that, and that's partly because she hasn't included a thesis. So she hasn't even defined herself yet.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think she's mostly at a 1. With a little work, she could probably take some of this information and turn it into a 2, but she's not there.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just taking notes.
No, you're fine. So what do you think, Rachel? Do you think moving towards emerging?
Yeah, it's hard. I think I'm so much in that middle school world that I'm like, 1, but maybe close to a 2, just because it's like, all right, a lot of it doesn't make sense, but she is, expressing herself, and she is not giving full reasons or arguing, but like talking about an issue or two, about it being less fun, about the textbooks, the website. So like, I don't know if I'm like the glass half full of trying to make her a little closer to the 2, or if it's just me being in the middle school context all the time and like, oh, this is more impressive than I see,
I mean,
I don't know.
I teach freshmen in a special needs classroom, and my students with special needs could outperform this.
Okay, good. That's good to know then for context. So I think 1 is fine then.
Yeah.
That's what I mean when I said what I see in her French work, there was a definite disconnect between this and what I saw her as capable of. It kind of made me realize I think I need to put this girl on my radar for language. The further we get, she needs to be on my radar.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to see what kind of writing she could do in Spanish, honestly. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That would be
and I think too what you were saying before, Jane, of like taking it sentence by sentence, it makes me think of, we did some PD on Friday with talking about special ed education and like just different strategies and like almost chunking information for her, like on the ELL sense and on the sense of if she does have a learning disability or if she needs to be tested or whatever, like just as much information that we could chunk for her, the better, of like, okay, we're going to write our thesis, like how Megan was talking about, and then really focus that,
Another thing that would be interesting is to see if she could sit and talk to you and make her points clearly in speaking, because it might be that she could formulate an opinion with, a thesis statement in speaking, but she has trouble putting that on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, the thesis work, I really think that like doing slotted thesi, we do that a lot for just, regular kids who already speak English, because they have a very hard time. They've got all the ideas floating around in their head. They just have no idea what order to put them in.
Right. And how to very simply and clearly state a thesis, and then take all the ideas and put them together to support that thesis.
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree. So certainly I would say she's a 1 with some evidence of it too, but she's not there yet.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's fair.
All right. So
should we go on to the rubric? The writing rubric?
Yeah, I think so, because I don't think it makes sense to look at reading or listening or speaking for argue, obviously. And then I don't think she's really explaining. I think we're sticking in the argument category. So I think we're fair. I think we're good there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So for the reading, let's see, the writing, sorry.
The writing rubric, yeah.
Should we start with linguistic complexity? Just go down the line here.
Yeah.
Guess there's not much organization that just jumps out, right? That we've talked about. So
the other thing I don't think, okay, I forgot about this part of the context. We do not have an ELL program in our school at all.
Oh, interesting.
We don't, because we have what we call a center program. So the families that want ELL support send their kids to Littleton High School. And they actually, if they send their kids to our school, they actually sign a document. The parents sign a document saying that they understand that their student will not receive ELL, specific ELL support.
Wow. That seems kind of sketchy almost, wow, that's really interesting.
It's the way the district handles it. So because of that, we have to understand that she's writing this with absolutely zero ELL support.
Wow. Okay. That's good context too. Thank you.
English 9 course for all English 9 kids with a very empathetic teacher, I might add, but not an ELL teacher.
Ooh.
So that kind of, I think, helps us understand maybe.
Yeah. I think that we have to place her at a 2 beginning. I just know that she's trying to get to the 3 because she's trying to expand her sentences.
Right.
But she's really not organized enough to make those sentences work. I can make long sentences too if I just string words together.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah,
and
I think that's fair.
Go ahead. Sorry, Rachel.
Oh, I just said that I think that's fair. Sorry.
Yeah. And even the phrases and short sentences with a tiny bit of help on punctuation or a little bit more attention to punctuation, her sentences would at least start to separate themselves. But they're minus that, they're not there yet.
Yeah.
So level 2 for language complexity beginning. Yep, I agree. Vocabulary usage.
Is that like a 2 as well? I feel like, or is it almost lower? I'm trying to think.
I think cell phone policy. I think that's a good term. Would be is, well, that's a grammar thing, but for conditional, that's good. Tricky is not particularly strong. Websites, let's see here.
Yeah, cell phones, websites, textbooks, phones, policy. I mean, one of the biggest, most content-based word in this is policy. And I think that comes probably from the prompt itself.
I agree. So I don't know, 2-ish to 3-ish. What do you think?
I think a 2 is probably fair.
Yeah, I think 2.
Okay. Yeah.
Just because, repeating vocabulary a lot, I just feel like with the vocabulary usage stuff, and using the word stuff, I just used, how embarrassing.
Yeah. Stuff is a weak word. Tricky is a weak word and using it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So 2.
Language control. It's hard to say with that one because I don't know. It's hard to know how much is modeled for her, right? If she doesn't have the that direct instruction around some of that. I'm sure the teacher you said was really sympathetic, but just thinking of how much is already modeled for her of an original text.
And not having the prompt is a problem here too. I still feel like when I look at 3, generally comprehensible, comprehensibility may from time to time be impeded by errors. I don't think so. I think the comprehensibility is impeded most of the time by her errors. So it makes me feel like I want to drop down and look at the 2. Comprehensibility may often be impeded by errors.
Which I think is very accurate. it's definitely missing words too, and missing verbs that make it hard to understand and everything. So I think two could be pretty accurate.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think there's.
No, you're fine.
I apologize. I'm kind of like in this one zone, and I'm really not rude, but
no, that's fine.
I think the comprehensibility may be significantly impeded. I don't understand that first sentence. The logic doesn't flow because I think the grammar is off. She's got her tenses mixed up.
Yeah, no, as I got to looking at the two, I thought I guess I just started up higher, but I don't disagree with you, Megan. I think there's significant comprehension issues.
First, we have 10 minutes left to just let us know.
Okay, thanks.
Second, because it would be tricky since almost all their websites and all the stuff they have, their cell phones, it would be a little more tricky. But if they textbooks, it would bore the students and make it less. Are you trying to say that everyone in their cell phones has the capacity to make school more interesting because she doesn't get me there?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I read that I read is probably supposed to be most of their cell phones and all that stuff they have in their cell phones.
Yes.
So that preposition would change. It would be a little more tricky, but if they, I agree. And now that you say that, Megan, I think I agree. I think she's more of a 1 to 2 than a 2.
I think so too. Yeah. And I get it. I know she wants cell phones. I don't understand really why.
She's not making an argument that's clear.
Yeah.
And we also are sympathetic readers because we're teachers.
Yeah,
if she were to
sure.
Give this argument to someone who wasn't a sympathetic reader, I don't know that her point would be made hardly at all.
And boredom might not be enough of evidence. Like even when some of my middle schoolers have talked about like cell phones in school, they talk about like safety, they talk about an emergency, and
right.
here, and maybe that's not what she means, but yeah, like having more powerful evidence for sure, and how that affects everything else.
So basically, if we're to recap, we're saying on linguistic complexity, we said 1 to 2. Is that right?
Yeah. I just said 2. I think that she's at a 2.
Okay.
Vocab usage also a 2, and then language control a 1 entering. She really doesn't seem to have control of this at all.
Okay. I agree.
All right. And then last, we just have to do, we really need to go over these specific grammar errors. And we have 7 minutes and 40 seconds.
Okay.
I've got a lot of instructional steps because we've talked about a lot of them. I just grammar.
Yeah. Excellent.
So relaxed, our first verb was the not using the past for this if clause with a conditional. They wouldn't have phones. That's a conditional that's used well. It would be tricky. I think that's a spelling error, obviously. Although we don't know if she means it would be or it could be.
Yeah.
So that's an issue. Since almost all their websites and all the stuff they have, I think she's missing her verb entirely. Or are on their cell phones or are in their cell phones. So we've got we have the absence of the verb twice. The stuff they have are their websites, and let's just take out the stuff. Okay, their websites are on, almost all their websites are on their cell phones. So we have really the absence of a verb. But if they used textbooks, we have the absence of another verb.
Hang on, I'm just trying to follow you there. If they
If you take out all that stuff, since almost all their websites are on their cell phones, if you take out all their stuff have and change it to are in, you've got a pretty comprehensible sentence.
Okay. So we need to be giving her filled in context, and she needs to fill in verbs if we're doing stuff.
Yes. Or take information, and she needs to turn that information into a complete sentence by putting a verb in.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Even it would bore the students. Like, I don't know if she was talking about like it would be boring for the students, like, or if she's talking about boredom, you know, like what
Right.
if she's like trying more, what kind of language she's trying to use, if that's wanting to be a verb, not wanting to be a verb.
I think she got lucky with how sophisticated that sounds. I was like, oh, it would be
right.
like.
But if you look at it again, it's a very parallel structure to the original sentence. If you say from the but, let's take the sentence and start with the if clause, the last one. If they used textbooks, so you have an if clause set up with the past tense verb, it would bore the students. If they use textbooks, it would bore the students. So she has an if clause in the past tense and a conditional in the dependent clause.
Yes.
So that again could be a conditional activity with using if clauses to set them up. If blah blah blah, this verb has to be in the past tense. Then blah blah blah, this is in the conditional. So I like what you say, Megan, to set things up with information, but she has to turn it into a complete sentence by filling in the correct verb.
Yeah. Yep. I agree completely. And so I think I've got for instructional steps, having her number her sentences first. I think first we should have her speak this out.
I agree.
And then I would even take notes on what she's saying.
Yeah.
And then I would have her repeat it as she's writing it, but number those sentences.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would maybe compare the two sentences compared to what I wrote for her notes and what she wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And then then we turn it into a paragraph, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
I also just think, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Rachel.
I also just think if we don't know if she might need more support with like sped down the road, different things, like I just think too, just back to basics, like as many visuals we can give her, like as much like where she can draw when she writes a condition, draw a picture of that condition, like just going back to even more basics kind of too, I think with her might help.
To me, it feels like if clause conditionals are just equations. You've got
that's true too.
It's a formula.
It's a formula, yeah.
It's a formula, totally. I use that formula in my French class when I teach the conditional. It's a formula. If plus a past tense verb, would, should, or could is your conditional verb. But yeah, I think that the like you talked about, breaking it up would make her understand that just stringing things together doesn't make a paragraph. You have to have 2 or 3 very concise thoughts expressed in concise sentences before you can start to string your ideas together.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I think that's pretty good. Our last one, we're rolling with it. We did it.
I know. This has been fun.
We got the hang.
Good stuff. All right. Well, I can get these uploaded. I'll get the video uploaded, get the notes done, upload them, then we're done.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks again, Megan, for always doing the uploading.
Yes, I know that was a lifesaver.
It's
not
clicking.
my skill set at all with the YouTube stuff. So.
All right. Well, I don't know. I don't think we have anything else that's synchronous, do we, for the rest of the class?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, guys.
All right. I'm going to stop recording.
Okay.